Oh, Miguel, I don't know what Sarah Smiles asked, but you were asking, I'm going to answer that. You were asking, are there categories? So I'm going to explain what the government does, and I also have to explain that there's no easy answer or solution. So many years ago, uh, what the government did, or what everybody did. I mean, it all started with rescue missions, and the first mission was the Macaulay mission in New York City in, I think, 1879. Um, but it was, three Hans and a cop Bible study, and they made you housing ready. Let's clean them up, teach them some scripture, and give them some food, and get them a job. And that worked. I mean, homeless was different back then, and it worked in a way. But then when we hit the 1980s, and this is the other one that bothers me, and I'm not, please, I am not Democrat and I am not Republican, because I think both parties are stuck on stupid. There's this war going on that we, the American public, are getting shafted. I think both parties are at fault. So I am not Republican and I am not a Democrat. But one thing that drives me crazy is people will comment on a YouTube video and they'll blame the Democrats. I mean, occasionally you'll get a Democrat blaming a Republican, but it's usually always the Republicans. That's a liberal city, that's a liberal country. Those lefties, and I mean, and if you look at homelessness, the numbers we see today, it is a direct result of failed Republican policies from the 1980s. Ronald Reagan cut $15 billion worth of HUD funding. And he also, we all know he closed the mental institutions funding and all that. So that is what's caused the crisis we see today. The current administration, Trump administration, wants to cut the safety net even more. He actually kind of has to, because he wants these tax cuts to the rich. They do this trickle down economics. If you're not totally aware, the theory is if rich people get richer, they're going to create more jobs. Well, that doesn't work, because when rich people get richer, to stockholders, they try to cut costs, which means less jobs. And we live in a capitalist country that is driven by profits. It's not driven by trickling down money. And hiring people is the biggest cost. Anyways, the cause of homelessness, 1980s, everything changed. Everything changed. And so homelessness started getting really bad. About 10 years ago, they made the decision to start focusing on chronic homelessness. And really, to briefly state what a chronic homelessness person is: a person that's been out there for a while, that's really stuck in homelessness, has probably developed an addiction, mental health problems, behavioral problems. That's a chronic homelessness. And they started doing this vulnerability index, and it's called a VI. Well, there's two: there's a vulnerability index and a VI SPIDAT, and it's to rate how close this person is to death. And then they're going to prioritize that person, fast track them into housing that doesn't exist. And I mean, they do. There's some successes in this. Um, in the description is a video link to where I helped house Lanny, invisiblepeople.tv/housing first. It's a 4-minute video that explains housing first. It works. It's a great solution. We just need the political will to make it happen. Anyways, I supported the movement to just chronic homelessness. I did. And I'll tell you, so I was here in Hollywood. I was facing homelessness myself. I was working as an outreach case manager. It was a temp job. I was, borderline the borderline poverty, scraping rent, crashing into homelessness myself. And I remember I went to Santa Monica and they had this book. We're in this meeting. It's right when they first start talking about the most vulnerable. And I spend a lot of time on the streets, always have. And they're passing around this book of photos of the 100 most vulnerable people in um, Santa Monica. And I started, when they started talking about most vulnerable, I was thinking about me because I was close to homelessness. I was like, what about me? What about me? You're helping these 100 people. Well, what about me? And they passed around the book. I swear to God, I could only look at 4 or 5 pictures. These people were so close to death. They were in alleys. They couldn't stand up. And I got it. I went, oh my gosh, I get this. If I end up homeless, chances are I'm going to fight and hopefully get out. These people, they're going to die. And we've got to help them. The theory is those people eat up 80% of the resources. And the theory was that if we end chronic homelessness, we could take all that funding and put it into ending family homelessness. It's not a bad idea, but it didn't work. So we're still trying to end chronic homelessness. It's getting worse. Elderly homelessness is a serious crisis. Family homelessness, youth homelessness, youth families and elderly are the fastest growing demographics. Why? Because we've only focused on chronic homelessness. So here's the rub for me. And her videos on Alicia. Alicia is homeless in front of her apartment building where she lived for 17 years. This is where she sleeps at night. Alicia, right now, she has some challenges. But if you put her in housing, I bet you in a year or two, she could restabilize once she rebuilt some self-worth and dignity, and she would be able to get into some kind of self-sufficiency. If we helped her for a year or two, got her off the streets, gave her permanent supportive housing, and I believe that she would go get a job. She wants to get a job. I think it's possible. Alicia spends her days every day in the public bathrooms on Venice Beach. Imagine the worst truck stop in America's bathroom. Disgusting. And multiply that by 10, and you have Venice Beach's bathrooms. They're horrible. They're concrete. Ugh. She spends all day, every day, hiding in the bathroom. She listens to her radio. And she sits in the bathroom because she's scared. And she used to be able to leave. She used to be able to leave and find some place to hide. But as she's getting older, she's now been on the streets 4 years, she can't leave. So she hides in the bathroom. What do you think her mental state is going to be in a year, 6 months, 2 years? If we don't house Alicia now, she is going to need support for the rest of her life. So while I used to think focusing on chronic homelessness was the smart solution, I don't think that anymore. I think the newly homeless, and right here in Los Angeles, 10,900 people enter into Los Angeles every month. 10,900. 10,000. Let that number sink in. 10,900. Now, homeless services here is doing a kick-ass job because a lot of them they're helping. Otherwise, it would be, crazy, But that's a huge number into homeless. They just added 72 beds. 72 beds. So my point I'm trying to make is it's complicated because we do have to take care of the most vulnerable if somebody's dying. But if the model is to save taxpayer money to free up resources, I will argue, let's say somebody is just entering homelessness. If you work to get them out of the streets, they're going to find a job really quickly and no longer need taxpayer money. A chronic homelessness person is going to need them for the rest of their life, is going to need support for the rest of their life. The issue is all around, we're triaging homelessness. Now, what triaging, is a war thing where there's not enough medical supplies and surgeons, so they rush, only the ones closest to death. We're triaging homelessness because we have a lack of support. There's a lack, and people have gotten complacent to that. That's my biggest issue these days, and why I rant a lot about this is because, you know what? I have friends that are out on the street, and they have a better chance of dying than they do getting off the streets and getting help. They have a better chance of dying. That's a problem. And homeless services seems to be okay. Well, we're going to check the vulnerability index. Well, we only have this much housing. Well, we only have this. We only have that's just the way it is. We need more money. We can't do anything with more money. I am unemployed. I have not had an income. Somebody in the Wave group sent me a couple $100 last night. A Wave group is our online support group for homeless people. I didn't ask. They sent me a couple $100, not to invisible people, but to me. That is all the money I have made this year. I lost my last contract as a freelancer in December 2018. So I'm flat broke. And I'm out helping people. Why? Because I can't walk by a homeless person and just accept that's the way it is. And if I can afford a tarp or if I can do something, I'm going to do it, And that's where we need to get to. It's like this big game here in and I didn't mean to go on in this rant. And it's actually, I should edit this out because this whole little piece was really spot on. But it's like this big game. So here in Los Angeles, there's 53,000 homeless people, according to the last count. There's more like 80,000. But there's 53,000 homeless people. The politicians have just now agreed to build these bridge housing. It's just a sexy name for shelter. And the bridge housing is just a temporary place to get people into housing. There's no housing. They go into bridge housing, the shelter, and they stay there. Okay? That's the problem. It's a political campaign. If you have 4,000 homeless people and you're building 70 beds, that's a political campaign. But get this, there's a report that came out that LA County or city of Los Angeles spends $30 million a year criminalizing homelessness, sweeping tents and everything else. That's 15 shelters. They spent $20 million on building shelters. They're about $2 million each. That's 10 shelters. But for the $30 million they're using to take people's tents to police, they could actually, but they don't. Why? I don't know. It does not make any sense whatsoever. It doesn't. I have no answers anymore. I was talking to somebody last night, and this person runs a nonprofit. They're very cost effective, and they lost their city contract because the city is hiring somebody to do their work for 3 times the money. 3 times. 3 times. Now, this person has been doing it for many, many years. They have huge impact getting people out of homelessness. They are very cost effective. The city fired them and is hiring somebody at 3 times the budget. It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, rant over. I know you asked prioritizing and the categories of homeless people, and you probably didn't want all that history and added rants, but that's what you got. And hopefully it educated you or educated somebody.